Hi, on this episode of the Rusted Nut Workshop, I'm going to show you how I built this sink for my shop without running water. So this is a great solution if you're in a space that doesn't have access to running water or if you're out camping. So this lets you bring a 5-gallon bucket and about $15 worth of parts and actually set up a sink, an area for paper towels so you can wash your hands, wash dishes, etc. So join me and I'll show you how I made it. Today we're going to be working on something that I've needed in the shop for a long time. I have had the opportunity to build my dream shop. I've been able to put a bunch of really cool tools in here. I built the shop at a time when in North Idaho there was a long delay for any permitting. So the process for getting a permit to add water to the shop or septic to the shop was both going to slow down the project by more than 4 or 5 months. And it was also going to cost a lot of money. So I'm a couple hundred feet away from the house and I'm a couple hundred yards away from the septic system. So the requirements were that you had to tie into the existing septic system. You couldn't put in a new field, etc. So long story short, it was time prohibitive and cost prohibitive to put in running water in the shop. So whenever I'm working on a project that I need running water, I want to wash my hands after working on something mechanical, or I need to wash off parts, I've got to go down to the house. My buddy David has a very cool little setup for his river rafting gear, and it includes a little hand pump or a foot operated pump for washing your hands or dishes in, whenever you're sitting on the side of the river. So that kit from that company, they're very proud of him. So that was, I think, $85 for a little foot operated pump. So I thought, why not spend a little time here in the shop, grab a couple of small pieces and see if we can actually build something comparable and then put it into practice here. So this will be an experiment. It may fail miserably, but it's all about adding new skills and trying something new. So instead of the $80 or $85 to get the kit, I went to Harbor Freight and spent $5.20 for a fluid siphon pump. And I'm gonna use a couple of bits of copper that I have from other previous projects. I think I'll end up using the copper from an ice maker and a couple of buckets, and then I'll probably finish off by making a little side table to hold paper towels, washcloth, soap, things like that. So we'll see if it works. Hopefully it does, and if it doesn't, then we'll iterate and we'll kind of go from there and see what else we can build. So let me explain what I'm going to try to do. So apologies for the crude drawing. So I'm going to use this siphon pump on top of a 5-gallon bucket. That's going to be the reservoir for clean water. This is going to be the wash basin, and I'll probably build a little drying rack or something inside of here as well. So the draw side of the siphon pump will go into the clean water. This bulb will sit inside of a piece of stainless steel or aluminum, whatever I've got sitting here. I'm gonna fabricate that. I want it to be heavy enough to kind of keep this in place. And I also plan on, if this is successful, I plan on using this while I'm out camping. So I want to keep, I don't want to stomp on this while rocks and stickers and things like that are underneath the siphon pump. So I'd like to have a little something solid here to help protect that for a little while. So you will draw fresh water from the inside of the bottom bucket, use the foot siphon, so you stomp on it to demand water, and it'll actually pump it up to a little piece of copper, something like this, that will bend up to the top. So you can actually, wash your hands, wash dishes, wash a paintbrush, whatever. And then collect this, and I'll be able to then just go walk off and dump that, either down at the house or off the side of the yard if it's not something nasty. So I'll have to come up with some sort of little clamp here that will hold it securely. But that's ultimately the design. I think if this works out, is going to be really handy to have in the shop. So we can always improve on it later. I like to, if I've got an idea, go ahead and get something built, even if it's not my preferred end goal, but at least that way, you've made a start and you can live with it for a little while and then improve on it. Originally, so I think we're $5.50 into the siphon pump, and a trip to the hardware store for a piece of a 1 foot long, 1/4 inch piece of soft copper, and this tubing, which will have plenty of extra. I think the grand total so far, if you don't count the cost of the 2 buckets, is sitting at about $11 right now. So what we're gonna do is we'll use, these are a cool little tool for bending copper, for bending pipes. So you get multiple different sizes, basically a big spring, and it keeps you from kinking the copper whenever you make the bend. So if you support it all the way around, it doesn't allow the little folds to happen in there, and it'll allow you to bend the copper to whatever shape that you want. And we're gonna make a little bit of a hose end here. So handy little tool. They only cost a couple of bucks. I've had this sitting in my toolbox for 22 years, 23 years. Have used it probably 3 or 4 times, but it's a great tool. If you don't have one of these, I've also used something like Gorilla Tape to actually wrap around the copper a strong tape, and it'll keep that kink out of there, and you can slowly kind of bend it into place, and then you've got the fun job of taking all of the Gorilla Tape and stuff like that off. So you basically just slide the tubing in, and then it allows you to make a bend, and you don't have any of the kinks that are in here. So with that, I'm going to use a piece of metal strapping. So this is pallet strapping. It came off of the pallet for the Harvey dust collector, and I usually just try to clip these and keep small lengths of this around. It's incredibly handy to make small jigs, to make door retaining hardware, there's 1,000,001 uses for spring steel. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna drill a couple of holes into the spring steel, bend this to actually kind of hold this on the bucket, and then we'll assemble it. One more. Perfect. Ow. Now that we've got our clip kind of fabricated here, this is going to hold it onto the edge of the bucket, and I'll connect the tubing to the bottom here. And now we just need to kind of fashion the downspouts. So I'm going to pull that off, slide our tubing bender in right here to the end. And I think I'm just going to do kind of a, I don't know, little half round twist here. walk over to my bench and use a dog hole and kind of bend the rest of this. So I think you're going to be able to see me over here at the bench. Yeah, you can. So just put it into a dog hole. And that looks like it's going to work. So that's going to be the basic shape. And as we pull this guy off of here, it's a pretty tight radius, so let's see if we can sneak it off. Easier said than done. But a little beat up. Straighten this guy back out. And now we have the radius for our little faucet or fountain here. So let's go ahead and continue working on some of the other pieces, and then we'll test it out here in just a little bit. So off camera, I took the piece that I cut out earlier with the grinder, and I took it over to my metal band saw. I've got a little Portaband that has a stand that is absolutely phenomenal. I wish I would have bought that tool probably 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Sure beats the heck out of a hacksaw and using a grinder. So this is straight off the tool. So you know it's a little rough on a couple of edges, so I'm going to use a sanding disc on the grinder and get this cleaned up. So what we're looking at is going to be what will hold this assembly, and these two pieces will fold up. So what I did to get the size, and this is going to depend on each individual, is I took my shop Crocs, and they're about as wide as my camping boots, maybe a little bit wider. And what I did was measure out the piece, knowing that these are going to flip up to kind of protect the bulb, and made sure that it was wide enough for my boot to get in there with a lot of extra room. So. And just like that, all of the edges are cleaned up. They're nice and soft. There's nothing sharp, nothing going to cut a foot, a hand, nothing's going to cut a tube. So overall, I think that looks good. I used a step drill to drill out the holes. I used a deburring tool. You can use sandpaper or whatever, just to make sure that none of these edges are sharp, nothing's going to get cut. Went around, made sure that everything is nice and polite on the outside. So if you step up there with a pair of water shoes or whatever, you're not gonna cut a toe. For the angles, I just found what I thought looked right, which was using the cutoff wheel after I took it off. And next up, we're going to decide where we're going to put the bends. So we'll put the tubing through the hole. And I want the bottom of this to be, I want the bottom of the bulb to rest on this, on this flat part here. So just using a square to roughly mark about where I can make the bend. There. Could use an extra set of hands to make all this stuff happen. Okay. And about there. So we'll fold these two tabs up, and that'll kind of give a protective area for us to stomp on while we're using the primer pump. So I'm going to try to bend this by hand. I will probably end up giving up and either grabbing a big wrench or a hammer to kind of finish the bends, but Why don't we go ahead and see what we can get by lining this guy up. This isn't rocket science by any stretch of the imagination, but I'd like to be somewhat straight. So go ahead and lock this down and then just see if we can get it to bend over by hand. And we're pretty good. We grab a mallet here. Okay, that looks good. So, yeah, I like that. So we'll come here to the other side. Try to straighten it out again. Double check our fit. Definitely have enough room in here for a shoe. And now, here's the fun part. We'll see if we can thread this guy in to both sides. Okay, and then we'll be able to step on the primer bowl with plenty of room. So I think that came out really nice. In the bottom bucket, I drilled a hole and fished the tubing in there. Had to make sure that it was staying underwater because it wanted to kind of flip up. Off camera, I used a rasp and kind of knocked down this little ridge. And David, this is for you, buddy. This is due to a camping trip. I got the idea, and let's see how it works. So go ahead and stomp on the bulb a couple of times, getting it primed. Here it comes. That is going to work perfectly here in the shop and while we're camping. So I like the fact that whenever I'm done with this, I can just empty the buckets, pick up the entire unit, stack the buckets, throw the pump and everything else inside, and we're done. So with that, why don't we work on maybe a little side table here that will hold a bar of soap or a towel or some paper towels or something like that. So for this segment, what I've done is the highly precise trace the inside and the outside of the bucket technique. Okay, so I freehand routed the groove in here. It's not pretty. I'll come back and I'll clean this up. But I just wanted to test for fit up front and see what it looks like. So that looks really good. It's about as long as a roll of paper towel, so I can actually put a kind of a wire bail off the edge and have a paper towel or a towel hanging there to dry my hands. And I can, you know, put a bar of soap or a container of hand cleaner or something in here. I'm probably going to come in and open this up just a touch, just so I've got a little bit more room here in the basin. But the most important part is it will fit inside of the bucket whenever it's time to pack everything up and go back home from camping. So I'll spend a little time to get this cleaned up. I think I'll toss a coat of Rubio on there, or maybe polyurethane. I have a tiny amount of Rubio mixed up here. It's Rubio Pure. And I'm going to just go ahead and put a little on, rub it in. Let's be honest, we've all seen the application of Rubio Monocoat multiple times on the internet. Yeah, I think it came out really nice. So I'll use it like this for a little while, see if I need some more room inside of that sink. But I think I'm just going to go ahead and set it on top of the container to dry overnight, and I'll come back in the morning. I'll check back in with you tomorrow and show you how we finished and where we're going to put this thing.